Hi YouTube, Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell below to be notified as to when I upload more content. So I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and as such I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land, and in doing so pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So this video, I think, is sort of carrying on from the one that I made earlier on initiation in contemporary witchcraft, or initiatory witchcraft, or traditional Wicca, or British traditional Wicca, or British traditional witchcraft. It's got so many titles these days, I can't keep up. Contemporary witchcraft is the title that I use, but what they all have in common is that they are all initiatory forms of witchcraft that can join up or trace their lineage back to Gerald Gardner. So one aspect about initiatory witchcraft, as with other initiatory traditions, is a point of secrecy, and that can be a bit of a bone of contention when it comes to non-initiates, especially in our modern society where there is this sort of preconceived idea that everything should be available. If you want something, you are entitled to attaining it, and that's not necessarily the case. And I have got some notes here, and maybe I should stick to them before I go down too many rabbit holes. So the oath of secrecy is actually associated or attached with most, if not all, contemporary witchcraft traditions. As I said, it's undertaken at and during initiation by the initiate, and basically what is occurring is that the initiate agrees that certain things contained within the craft, the coven in particular, because every coven is autonomous, I should say, autonomous, where did that word come from? Autonomous, but there are certain things that are not to be disclosed outside of the tradition, outside of the circle, especially in relation or especially to non-initiates. Now, when you say that straight up, it sort of, I don't know, alludes to the fact that there's a bit of elitism going on, secrets, that we're all a bunch of snobs, a lot of conspiracy theories can erupt, but there are really some logical aspects as to why it is, most initiates or initiates really should adhere to this act of secrecy was asked of them. I suppose I could confess, and I do confess that in my book Contemporary Witchcraft, that elitism, I'm happy for that. I belong to a club. I have undertaken initiation. I have agreed to follow certain teachings, to do certain research. My whole lens of how I see the craft, how I see the mysteries, is shaped by my journey with the craft. That doesn't mean to say that there is only one view, one lens to look at. It's just the lens that I have chosen to look out of. And in a way, it protects the teachings, by and large, from being watered down, so nothing gets offended for anybody, or no one ever gets offended by the teachings. I'm not making sense this afternoon, I do apologise. That in itself can be a bone of contention, but a good example of that is the misunderstanding of what's become known as the Wiccan read, how experts who have never set foot inside an initiatory tradition give their 2 cents worth of what that actually means and who that includes. And from an initiatory perspective, the majority of these, well, they might be do-gooders, they might have best intentions out there, but they are basically giving their opinion on something that they don't fully understand. And why I say that is because they are not initiated, and therefore they have not been given access to information or have experienced things, how it's done within an initiatory circle. And that is the next point, that initiatory or contemporary witchcraft is a mystery tradition. It is set up like that. Everything is in connection with deity, the divine, the goddess, and we are going beyond realms that can be easily explained, even in our modern age where we've got academics analysing everything and scientists analysing everything to prove things exist or don't exist. When it comes to the mysteries, we step into a realm that cannot be talked about, explained, analysed, discussed even, really. Why? Because it's about the experience. It's like, I don't know, me lecturing a parent about how they should control or parent their child when I've never actually had a child to parent myself. So yes, I could write books, become an expert of what I perceive, but I'm always going to be perceiving things from the outside. I'm never going to be able to fully understand from actually being part of the circle going through the teachings. And even if I was, especially when it comes to the mystery cults, traditions, a lot of this is beyond words. And English in particular is very limited to description, especially of certain things. I think it's the Inuits who have over 300 words for snow or something like that. Maybe that's just a social media furphy. While in English language we only have 1 word, maybe 2 if you include ice or sleet. But we don't have a lot of words to describe things. Sometimes things, as I said, are more sensory. They go beyond our ability to subscribe to them. I do think, and yes, I agree that if you become initiated, you do automatically sort of, it sets up an us and them, but it's not intended to be that we're better than anybody else. Our tradition or our way of doing things is any more true. It's tapping into one source only. And in these days with witchcraft, as we are fully aware, there are so many different interpretations of it. Initiatory contemporary witchcraft is only one way. And even within that, there are a number of strands: Gardnerian, Alexandrian, Algards, which is a combination of both. How they practice, I don't know. I've never been in an Algard circle. I'm not an Algard initiate of both traditions. So if you want to know more about that, it's best to contact someone who actually has been initiated and who is practicing that. I do think in our modern age of instant access to everything, we have also developed, I don't know if this is just an Australian acronym, but over here we call people FOMOs, which stands for fear of missing out. So they have to know or be or experience everything And often these people flit very quickly from one thing to another. We sort of see them in workshop junkies who forever are doing workshops, and there's nothing wrong with increasing your knowledge, but it's like, when are you going to actually apply that stuff? We see it these days, especially how, say, Australia has brought in, a number of years ago, maybe it's even 15, 20 years ago, the training and assessment program when it comes to various, it's supposed to be for sort of like formulating training. Okay, this is more sort of like in skill-based training for work and things like that. But basically, if you've done your TNA or TNE certificate, it gives you the skills to actually pick up anything, regardless of whether you have some in-depth knowledge or practice it yourself, and then teach. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but what it means is that I often see people teaching stuff that they don't have any personal experience or aptitude to, or they don't fully, how can I say it without being too snarky? It's like they haven't embodied. They don't really understand what it's like, or they may have gone off into the TNA area, TAE, I should say, training and assessment. No, it says TNA, training and assessment. Gone into that sort of branch of teaching that they don't or no longer practice or perform, and things change. There has been a big push recently that this is where the money is. So instead of, and I've mentioned this in my video about Reiki, instead of actually learning Reiki and embodying, when you get, again, that's another initiatory tradition, so obviously, when you get your attunements, that's similar to initiation, and then allowing that energy to realign in you, then work with that energy and healing other people before you're moving on to your Reiki 2, and then go through the whole process again of the attunement, learning it, and then integrating it before you then practice, before you go on to your masters. We're seeing people becoming at least level 2s in a weekend, from nothing to level 2 in a weekend. I don't know where they're allowing this energy to integrate and to practice. And then the next weekend they're doing the masters. Now, I'm very suspicious of that sort of training, because even taking the sort of mystery cult tradition away from that, the lineage stuff, we're working with energy here. When do these so-called healers or teachers get an opportunity to actually integrate and feel the changes in this energy? They don't. Yet then they rush off and start training up other people, possibly with good intentions. I'm not going to say that it's purely for money. But yeah, it's like you're churning out people who actually have not experienced what Reiki is. And if you're doing a level 1 and level 2 in a weekend, Miss Suspicious here wonders what's been taken out. And what tends to be taken out would be the practical aspect to it. But hey, each to their own. And I'm not getting off track despite my notes here. So, magical secrecy. This can be found throughout numerous esoteric, occult teachings, and it can become in various forms. It's even found in Freemasons or Masonry. Even Girl Guides and Brownies and Scouts and things like that. We have a sort of initiation as such, but you can actually talk about it outside the circle. That's the difference. When it comes to spell casting, this ties in with what's known as the 4 powers of the Sphinx: to will, to know, to dare, to keep silent. And it is the latter aspect, the keep silent, that we often don't see on social media, where people are broadcasting their spells left, right and centre. Where this first came into occult teachings, I don't know. I would say maybe 17th, 18th century with Eliphas Levi. That's where I first noticed it. In this book, Transcendental Magic. It may have very well predated him. Probably has. I don't know, just off the top of my head. It sort of hones into the concept that you don't go talking about your magical workings, and there's various reasons and thought processes of that. The main one for me is you've worked the energy to contain something to a specific focal point, whether you've used like a doll or a candle or whatever. So you've built up this energy to contain it into this other object. Talking about it, sharing images, disperses that energy so it's no longer contained. Also, it opens you up to the possibility that should, I don't know, Joe Blow, Mary Smith, see your posting, develop some sort of envy or jealousy or hatred towards you, they could actually use counter magic against you and take that energy, or start planting that seed of doubt if they don't believe in magic, and it sort of starts to unravel. Just see, it's like when we perform our magics, as you see our casting, it's like winding a ball of wool, and we've got this nice little contained ball of wool. Yet when we start putting it out there, it's almost like a kitten starting to play with it, and it begins to unravel. All the threads begin to dissipate and appear, and our ball gets smaller and smaller because the intent to get smaller and smaller, and people who may not believe in magic could start, as I said, planting that seed, which also draws away our energy towards that magical goal. We also open ourselves up to other people copying us, and then, and I sort of dissing us, as they do on social media these days. So if you only go there, that's not a good reason why not to put everything on social media. If you want to do it after the effect, after the objective has been achieved, it's entirely up to you, but not while it is actually happening. Another reason why there's secrecy within the initiatory traditions is that, especially in this day and age, even though we're 21st century, people are still being persecuted for their religious or spiritual beliefs. It is used in family law court battles, especially when it comes to child custody. People are, depending on where you live, people are still getting threatened or having rocks thrown through their windows, etc., like that. Losing their jobs is another one. I actually lost my job. I didn't have my contract renewed. And this goes back to the early 90s. At that stage, I was only talking about numerology, but I didn't know that a couple of the partners of the firm that I was working for were very staunch Christians who didn't like any form of devil worship, and that included astrology, numerology, even your horoscopes in the paper. So that was really interesting. I said, okay, that was in the 90s, but it still happens. So not everybody is out of the broom closet, and not everybody wants to be. A lot of people like to keep their own religious or spiritual beliefs to themselves, and that's their right. And just because you are out doesn't mean that's given you the God-given right to out everybody else, especially when you see them outside covens, like in another environment, whether it be at work, whether it be in the park or with their family or whatever. So, as I said, you might not care, but it's important to respect other people's situations. You might not even know their situation as well. So I suppose in a way this is why the Masons used to have, or they still do, secret handshakes and cufflinks, and we all used to laugh at them because we all knew. But it's knowing but not knowing sort of thing. I think even Raymond Buckman in his big book said that you can shout the mysteries from the rooftop, but only those who initiated or who are aware will know. So it's being a witch out in plain sight, and some people prefer that as opposed to being in everybody else's face. Another aspect of magical secrecy is, I think as I've touched on this, that certain teachings are best understood within the context, within the teachings. And again, we've seen this with the Wiccan Read. Majority of interpretations out there are incorrect, and it doesn't take you to be a genius to actually realise that if you actually read the read properly, but everybody's putting their own interpretations on it. There is a difference between even like looking at the elements. We all know about the elements, but they mean different when you are sort of shown or taught within a circle, and they mean something different too when you're shown or taught within a traditional witchcraft circle as well. So we have different levels. Another thing, I know everybody's really big on reading these days, but that does not make you a witch. It's through practice. It's through actually applying yourself and actually doing that work. And as I said earlier, it's all about experience, because there is a limit as to how much even the most experienced person can actually tell you or write about it. So I've got it here in my eye. I don't know where it's coming from. And it's a very personal thing. People might have different experiences, but there's always a similarity through them. It creates a common bond between people. And that does, yes, set you apart from other people. And this is where I suppose anybody who's on the outside may think it's elitist, but you just need to look at it, say like a group of close friends at school or whatever. It gets to a stage where, you guys all know what's going on. You have your own personal jokes. You may have your own secret little passwords and things like that no one else knows about or knows the true meaning of, because they're not part of your secret little group. And that's okay. We all do it. I think there is something lost in translation, I should say, when people try to, dissect, deconstruct, analyse witchcraft circles. And I know this is a big thing with academics. There's been something recently that I commented on and almost got my head bitten off. Someone was making a comparison between Wicca and Druidry. And it's just like, well, and it was like Druidry, if I can remember correctly, was probably more nature-based as opposed to witchcraft or Wicca. And it's just like, well, yes and no. I'm not a druid, so I can't actually talk about Druidry. But from what I have seen, it does seem to be, especially through the Oddbud teachings, very heavily nature-orientated. Whereas Wicca or modern witchcraft, if you go by the socials, and I've mentioned this before, tends to have removed all of that aspect out of it, and it just seems to be a focus on spells. However, if you ask an initiate of witchcraft, you'll be told that spell casting is just one minute aspect to it. And again, it depends on the initiate, the teachings, the coven that they belong to, as to that nature element through it. When I was stepping out, we did have a huge nature aspect in our craft. I still describe my form of witchcraft as nature-centric because we follow the seasons and we follow the moon. So how more nature can you get? The focus on simply operative magic to me is magic. It's not actually craft. But that's just my teachings. But this is what this person, I don't know if they were initiate or not. Someone said that they were, or they thought that they were. But it's like, it's a bit sad when witchcraft has been sort of deconstructed to that extent where it's only seen as a thing you do to get something that you want, like a tool. And I do know that there's people out there who view it as such, but that's just my opinion because my craft has so much more in it, involved in it, wrapped around it, incorporated in it than just witchcrafting, because my form of witchcraft, my contemporary witchcraft, is a mystery cult. And the mystery cults don't have anything to do with witchcrafting. It's all about understanding the mysteries. And that can only truly be done through initiation. And if you want to know more, then maybe you should look into becoming initiated into a form of contemporary, initiatory, BTW, whatever the term you want to come across. Because only then will you truly know what I am talking about. Blessings.